Hello. So we are Neil and Gail from Brunch with the Bradleys, Radio Abbey in Kenilworth, also known as Kenilworth's most famous couple. And we are here today speaking live to Dan Jones, who's also quite famous.
Just a little bit more.
A little bit more. So exactly 2021. On Saturday, the 5th of June, the people of Coventry will join together to create a historic mass of participation. Coventry moves together. It is, according to the internet, a monumental and ambitious piece of music by composer and sound artist Dan Jones.
And without further ado, Dan, how the heck are you going to make this work? And how did you even start thinking about it? What was the thought process?
Well, I was approached, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I really don't feel famous. I'm much more comfortable as sort of backroom boy, working behind the scenes, I have to say. But I've worked on various large scale surround sound projects outdoors, music for 7 ice cream vans. A piece I've done with Luke Jerram, the artist Luke Jerram, called Sky Orchestra, where we basically have 7 hot air balloons playing different bits of a piece of music as it floats over a city. Done it in Sydney, Switzerland, Canada, and so on. And I've always been fascinated by surround sound, and I think the Coventry team approached me because of that, because they were looking at a way of creating what they were calling the collective moment, which was, after all of these extraordinary celebrations which Justine Thiman and her team have put together for the 5th of June, they wanted one moment that would reach out right across the city, not just treating, the citizens of Coventry as an audience, but actually getting them to participate in this moment. And, I think recently things like clapping for carers, and there was a piece, I don't know if you remember, running up to the Olympics called All the Bells that Martin Creed did, where he wanted everybody to ring a bell. It was very much in that spirit of getting everybody. But I sort of said to them, if we get everybody to bang a pot or a pan, then all they'll really hear is themselves. And how can we get everybody to hear each other and feel like a part of the community, so that the piece is implicitly a community piece? And we looked at all the sorts of ideas that might be sort of variations on things I've done before. Could we use airships, make it a little less weather dependent than hot air balloons, for example, which I have to say, Luke and I have almost given up the ghost on that, because it is so difficult to get fly days where we can actually do it. And we looked at putting speakers on the tops of tall buildings so that we could have this music reach out right across the entirety of Coventry. And it was all way too expensive. I mean, we're talking millions of pounds. And of course, the good thing to do in that instance is to think, well, what do we have already in our hands? We've got phones, car hi-fis, smart TVs, Bluetooth speakers. Let's use that and create a really beautiful kind of matrix of surround sound on a smaller scale that people can enjoy in their streets, in their gardens, with their neighbours. We can make this work around social distancing, whatever the regulation. We were planning ahead. We didn't know, and none of us know, how this is, going to play out from one week to the next, really. So we thought that that's the way to go. And I'll use the experience I've got creating surround sound to sort of weave this musical tapestry or jigsaw puzzle or any number of mixed metaphors across Coventry, so that people can put that together. They're the players, their phones, speakers, radios, and so on are the musical instruments of the orchestra. And we're asking them to piece it together. So I'm really excited. It's beyond build it, they will come, because we're asking people to come and build it. So I don't know quite how that works. It's I'm feeling very, very optimistic about it, very hopeful about it, but obviously very nervous, because it relies entirely on that sense of community of people putting it together themselves.
Can I ask a question as a Coventry lass? How much were you inspired by Delia Derbyshire?
Well, that's interesting, because it was like in the first conversation, Justine and the team mentioned her and sort of said they were keen to include her in the piece. And instantly my thoughts which I feel really foolish about. I'm saying this as somebody who's seen the light since.
I know what you're going to say.
The Doctor Who would kind of eclipse other things. And Doctor Who, I'm not belittling it. It's an amazing achievement on her part. It really is a brilliant piece of work, and it completely lays to rest the provocation I think she was given quite early on, which is that electronic music would never reach a popular audience, and how wrong they could have, they were in terms of what she actually achieved. She didn't compromise her skills or talent or vision, and created that iconic piece of music, which, the world, the Derbyshire estate should be rightly proud. But I just didn't, I thought it was such a strong flavour that it might take over. But then I started looking again at her extraordinary body of work and her ideas and the interviews, and I thought, how foolish, I should definitely include her, or somehow weave elements of her thinking and ideas into the piece. And incidentally, she was in love with radio as a medium. That might seem obvious working for the Radiophonic Workshop, but most of their work was televisual. And she really adored radio. She saw it as a sort of great art in its own right. She also understood that working with the spoken voice could be a really sort of important part of musical thinking. And I've taken on those ideas, and very luckily the Derbyshire estate and the Delia Derbyshire archive have let me use some previously unused threads of sound that she had lying around. So I've woven them in. I can't pretend for a minute this is, the greatest tribute to Delia Derbyshire. I sort of think if she were alive, I would have happily stood aside to see what she would do with 7 radio stations or 9 radio stations. And I think she would have just adored that idea. I think one of her pieces, I'm trying to remember what it's called, Inventions for Radio. It's a piece she co-created with Barry Beaumonge. They even thought about broadcasting it on different radio stations.
Talking about voices, I know you've worked a lot with the primary school children in Coventry. Tell us a bit about that and on their input.
Well, I've worked with children before. I'm always fascinated by how they try to articulate things, and that they don't, use phrases that have become hackneyed, or it's the very act of seeing them trying to find the right words, which is partly so fascinating and engaging and so sincere and truthful. I think they're kind of emotional X-rays. They have a way of seeing through to the heart of the matter, and we can be patronizing about that and sort of say, well, that's not realistic, or when you grow up you'll realize that's not how things work. But actually, so we went in trying to do 2 things. I worked with a brilliant musical director, workshop leader called Guy Hughes, who's an actor and composer himself, and he's just very adept at being able to talk with the kids and communicate with them. So I let him take the reins on a lot of those workshops. And we were asking the kids 2 things. We wanted them, first of all, I didn't want to write music for them to sing. I wanted them to create their own musical ideas. And my promise was, I will try and weave those ideas together. And it is a bit like, as I said to somebody the other day, jumping out of a plane with a lot of silk and a sewing kit, because you don't quite know what's going to happen. Yeah. But I thought, let's do it. Let's take the risk and see what happens. And I'm really pleased to say that they delivered triumphantly. And I love what their musical ideas. They're spontaneous. I think there's that. I wanted the creativity to come from them. I wanted their impulses to be in the moment and sort of captured. And the other thing was to ask them some questions, nothing to do with music, just what they wanted for the future and the future of Coventry. Mm-hmm. And I could have gone in with an agenda and tried to ask leading questions to get them to say certain things. But what's really interesting is I've been telling a lot of people that you talk about the future with kids, and the realm of fantasy and science fiction could, and the role of technology and what we think of as cities in a material sense could quite easily take over. And there'd be nothing wrong with that. But they turned the conversation towards how we live together in the future and how we can look after each other. And I was blown away by that, because I think it shows
what a positive thing, what a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's really become a very emotional piece, because I've simply tried to, I think about 2/3 of their answers were about what you'd call social care, but brilliantly they don't use that phrase. They find their own words to describe these things. And I mean, I think it's a great sign for Coventry. Somebody said to me the other day, that's in no small part to it being in Coventry, you know, a city that's got reconciliation sort of running through its veins as a legacy and idea. But
so Dan, on 2021 on Saturday, what can the people of Coventry expect? What's going to happen?
Well, we've got different layers of the music and different musical voices coming through these 7 different streams distributed on 9 radio stations. And you can find out which to choose. I mean, you know, if people can get together with their neighbours and do a bit of thinking beforehand, it's all to the good. You know, WhatsApp neighbourhood groups could come in really handy if people have those, or, you know, whatever. I suppose you could always shout across the fence and get different people to tune into different stations, because what you're doing is putting together a musical jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And people might say, well, why do that? Why don't just put everything the same thing on all stations? But what we're trying to do by having those different signals coming from different directions is creating a sort of beautiful musical space for people to inhabit and feel that they are coming together as a community by creating that. And I really do believe that. I mean, I think there's something magical about good surround sound, about being in a space. None of us, you know, when we go to a concert hall, the orchestra's at one end of the room and we're at the other end, generally speaking. The conductor or some of the players actually have the best experience because they're sort of being bathed. They're in a big musical bath, having that music filter through from all directions. And I love that. It's a magical thing to have that sort of sense of the music moving around you. So that's why.
That's beautiful. So it will take place on this Saturday
at exactly 21 minutes past 8, which is, of course, 2021.
You know, we've been given the job to press the button, to press play at Radio.
Right.
Sorry about that, Dan.
They've asked him to do it. We're going to be going, not yet, but you keep your hands down.
We'll be arguing, obviously.
What happens if we miss the second?
So I'd just like to publicly announce at this stage that if the music doesn't work and appears to be totally out of sync, I think the smoke has come before.
Dan, thanks so much for talking to Brunch with the Bradleys, Radio Abbey. We're so excited to be part of this, and thank you.
I'm so grateful that you're doing it. Believe me, and
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.